What's up, everybody? My name is Gilbert Schirsch. I'm a high school strength and conditioning coach. I'm a PE teacher in Harlem. And today, I'm back in Harlem, baby. Schools are back. Kinda. Very, very kinda. We are still teaching remote. We are still teaching kids through YouTube videos, which is why I'm still making this video. And here I am in the school with no orange backdrop and this crazy echo in the gymnasium, but hey, it's what we got to work with. So, without further ado, today, we are going to be talking about your posture and your positions throughout the day. This video is going to cover three main things. First, we're going to cover the consequences of poor posture and poor positioning and what can happen if you continuously practice those things. Second thing we're going to talk about is how to establish a proper standing position and a proper sitting position. What is good posture? The third thing we're going to cover is why or why not certain people are experiencing pain from poor posture and certain people are not. You, of course, never want to practice any sort of bad postural habits, but you may be wondering, hey man, I've been walking around like this forever. Doesn't hurt me. What's going on? We're going to talk about that. So, without further ado, let's start talking about the consequences of poor posture. So, we all have some sort of basic understanding of what poor posture is. I mean, if you see someone and they're walking like this, you have an idea that that person does not have great posture going on for them. Some of the inherent things in poor posture will include rounded shoulders forward, a curved spine, a head that's jutting forward like this. In general, right, we want a straight, solid, rock-solid spine. We want our shoulders set in place, and we want to make sure that our pelvis isn't tilted forward or too far backward like that. Because again, that's going to lead to our spine being in some sort of unalignment. And we're going to go into that in far greater detail in about like 2 or 3 minutes. But let's talk about the consequences of this. You know, when we are in poor positions, our body slowly adopts those poor positions as the default, which is why it's so hard to break away from poor posture once it's been set in place. And the consequences are as follows, right? The first one is stiff tissues. So think of it this way. If I have my shoulders slumped forward, right, this pec muscle is now by definition shorter, right? It doesn't have to be as far back as it usually is, and it adopts this position. The muscle will actually get shorter and stiffer just like this, and that's gonna restrict your range of motion, right? So suddenly stiff tissue set in, and now suddenly I have this shorter pec muscle, and suddenly I have trouble going overhead because it locks up right there. Whereas if I'm used to being right here, now I may have full range of motion for my shoulder, and I'm less likely to tear it during volleyball. Right? Another thing that can happen is if we are consistently in poor positions, especially while we're sitting, working at a computer, just lying in bed, where our spine's in these funky, weird, curved positions all the time, that can lead to scoliosis, which is a permanent bending of the spine, and it's wickedly hard to fix. And again, right, misalignment of the spine can lead to all sorts of funky issues where, again, you have stiff tissues, you have less range of motion, and of course, all of this is leading to joint pain. And then the final bit here is it's gonna set the groundwork for an acute injury. So you remember how I just talked about, right, if the pec muscle gets shorter, now my shoulder's rounded forward, now I decide I'm gonna go play volleyball with my friends, and I try and go overhead, but I only really have this range of motion because this tissue, right, this musculature and all the tendons around it is naturally short because it's used to being there. Suddenly I go overhead to go for a spike and I've torn my pectoral muscle, or something's happened with my shoulder. Because I have adopted poor positions throughout my day, it's going to affect me when I suddenly need large ranges of motion, and then we have something like an acute injury, which is going to take a really, really long time to recover from. And again, at the end of the day, all of these things lead to joint pain, or just pain in general, right? Tight, stiff tissues are not comfortable. You know when your back is tight if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, right? That is your body signaling that your tissues are not healthy and that you've probably been holding poor positions. So keep in mind, posture isn't this thing that exists because you want to just puff out your chest and it suddenly makes you look better. No, this is the way your body was meant to move, right? Your hardware, right? This is the hardware of the whole system has a set way of actually moving and operating for an incredible amount of time. You have an incredible adaptation machine right here. However, the software, right, our brains running the situation, doesn't necessarily have the correct patterns for us to move in. Meaning, not everyone was taught how to move well. Not everyone was taught how to have good posture. This is what this video is after. I'm trying to give you some software to escape misusing the hardware. So let's start talking about how to stand, how to sit, how to walk with better positions so your hardware lasts longer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Standing 101. And yes, there is a proper way to stand and there is an improper way to stand. And before we get going, if you are wondering why I am suddenly in the auditorium, that is because they're doing coronavirus testing in the gymnasium and I need to find a new home to shoot a video halfway through shooting it. So here I am. But anyway, Standing 101. Yes, there's a good way to do it. And what I'm about to teach you is called the bracing sequence. This is just a sequence of movements, of tiny movements that you need to think about in order to organize your spine into a very solid position so you know that your posture is in a good place, that your position is excellent. So first things first, we're going to talk about the pelvis. Generally speaking, most people have a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt. That means their pelvis is tilted forward and they're kind of walking around with their butt stuck out a little bit. And the other thing that they're doing is usually their shoulders are a little bit slumped forward and the head is jutting forward. Maybe not to this degree, but this is a direct product of sitting, right? When we sit, a lot of the times our hip flexors get tight, they pull our pelvis forward, our shoulders come forward because we're at the computer, and our head juts forward while we're looking at the screen. These are things to avoid, especially when we're standing. So the first thing that we're gonna do is squeeze our butt. And the way we do that is we're gonna screw our feet into the ground. So I'm screwing my feet into the ground. If my feet were moving, right, they'd be shifting outwards like this, but I'm not gonna let them move. So I'm here, right? I've screwed my feet in the ground and I'm gonna push my hips forward and boom, I've engaged my glutes. My glutes are turned on, I'm squeezing my butt, right? And what that's gonna do is set the pelvis at exactly the right neutral place because your butt is designed for you, which is great. So you're squeezing your butt, and then the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take a big deep breath into your lower obliques. So I like to think about filling up the lower half of my body and trying to push this part of my body out with my breath. So it's a real deep breath. And on the exhale, I'm gonna stiffen all of the musculature around my spine. Now this doesn't have to be crazy tight, right? Like I'm squeezing my butt. I don't have to be super tight, like I'm about to go for like a 1 rep max deadlift or something like that. No, I'm just engaging the musculature around my spine. So again, I squeeze my butt, big breath, pushing out the obliques. Boom, I've stiffened this musculature. I know that's in a good place. Now, the shoulders, right? We've got to fix these shoulders. And the best way to think about that is just pull them back and down. We call that retract and depress. So I'm here, pull my shoulders back, right? And now I don't want to be here, right? I don't want to have my shoulders all the way back but high up and depressed, right? So I'm actively pulling my shoulders back and pulling them down. And this is where my shoulders should be. And the final bit is this headpiece, right? I don't want to be here when I'm walking around. This is something that I have to work on a consistent basis. But I need to be pushing my chin back, and we basically want our ears in line with our shoulders while they're back here. And the more you practice this, the more you will find that you are in a good position longer. The first time you do this, it's gonna be weird, but let's make this the first time you do this. So go ahead, stand up. I'll wait. All right, now you're standing. Great, let's do this together. Screw your feet into the ground. Squeeze your butt by pushing forward. Both cheeks should be squeezed. Take a big breath into your belly and push out your obliques. Exhale, pull the rib cage down, right? You're super tight. It's all engaged. Nothing could get past you. Pull the shoulders back and down. Pull the head back. And here we are, right? Good position. And this is the position your torso should be in when you're walking. And when you're sitting. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the bracing sequence, and that is how you establish a solid position for standing, walking, sitting, running, lifting, anything you do. Organize your spine first through this sequence, and then the rest should follow quite nicely. All right, I know what you're thinking. This seems like a lot of work. What do you mean I have to engage my glutes, turn my rib cage on, keep my shoulders back, kind of jacks up my neck while I'm standing, sitting, walking? Are you telling me I should be working the entire time? To a certain extent, yes, because this is the way your body was designed to move. Now, if you are a person who's sort of saying to yourself, why do this if I have no pain? Let me explain why. You've got these amazing joints. They're designed to last around 110 years if they're used properly. But if they're not used properly, that expiration date begins to sink a little bit. And what happens is, think of yourself kind of like a car. And if you're a car and you don't do any maintenance and you don't do any alignments, eventually gears start grinding against each other, the axle isn't running smoothly, and things begin to fall apart. But it happens slowly, right? You can have a car that's a little bit janky that'll still get on the highway and get you to where you need to go. But eventually those problems will lead to bigger problems. So the idea here is, if you're someone who is consistently working like this, right, and you don't have any pain yet, what I'm telling you is eventually you will. Because right here, zero musculature is engaged, and it's easy to be here, right? It's easy to be on a computer just like this, not engaging anything, but eventually, right, your joints and your neck muscles and your discs and your spine will begin to take that load and will react poorly to it, as opposed to your musculature, which is designed to support all of those systems. So if you, again, are kind of like, there's no way I'm going to work to try and fix my posture or anything like that, I'm not in any sort of pain, why would I change it now? It's coming. That's what I'm telling you. You have a set number of duty cycles in which you can move a joint pain-free as long as it's in a good position. The more times you repeat a motion that that's not in a great position, or that you're using something that isn't done the way your hardware was designed to go, the closer you are to shutting down that joint and experiencing pain. So, what's the moral of the story? Begin thinking obsessively about your posture and about your position, and 100% take that bracing sequence and practice it over and over and over again. You're standing in line while you're shopping? Cool. Squeeze your butt, take a great breath, shoulders back, head back. Okay, sweet, I'm in a good position. Right before you start walking, right before. Every time you sit down in a chair, go through that bracing sequence. Get tight, shoulders are back and down, chin is back. Now I can sit down. I know my spine's in some sort of position that's going to support my body. Get used to doing that bracing sequence. It's one of the most life-changing things I've ever learned how to do in my life, from sitting, lifting, running, sprinting, all of it. It always, that movement in that sequence of events has benefited me and helped me escape a whole lot of pain for a very, very long time. And it's something that I want to spread to you. So that's my piece on posture and position, and I hope you really enjoyed it. And as always, if you made it to the end of the video, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe. If you comment, I guarantee I will comment back. I know things were a little bit bumpy today. I know there's a crazy echo in the video. I know there's switching positions. There's no orange backdrop. It kills my heart, but we got the video out. This is the time to do it, and I'm glad that I got to do this little spiel on posture and position. So again, like, subscribe, and I will see you next week.